Yeah, my name is Jamie Miller. I'm here with my colleague Tony Eames in the middle there. We're from a company called T-Pren, which is Welsh for wooden house. We're based in Lampeter in West Wales. And we are a workers' cooperative, non-profit organisation specialising in self-build structures using roundwood. We've been building roundwood for over 10 years now and experimenting with different kind of house styles, building styles, stages, studios, barns, community centres, things like that. But our main focus is on facilitating self-build. We wanted to be a crossover for individuals that want to use natural materials and the way that scares the hell out of planning and building regs when you say, I want to build with this wooden branch that I found on the floor, things like that. We've got local to us is the Lamas project, where they've built very natural buildings using clay, mud out the ground, straw bale, stone, anything you can lay your hands on. One of the main sort of hurdles was building regs, because how do you actually quantify these materials? Are they structurally sound? So we've done a lot of experimentation over the last 10 years with different styles and shapes, and we've come up with, hopefully, a solution that is acceptable to them. And in our local county of Ceredigion, we've actually set the precedent with 2 buildings, a community centre and the first residential property, which I'll go into in a bit. So yeah, the many benefits of roundwood timber framing. For us, for me personally, it's very important that where these materials are coming from are sustainable. And the biggest resource has got to be woodlands in the UK. Currently only 10% of the UK is wooded, which is a tiny amount compared to something like 44-50% in Europe for many countries. With roundwood, you gain 50% structural strength because we're not cutting into the beams, not reducing its structural, so you're building with trees basically. We cut down on the processing because we don't need any milling. We're making connections with local woodland owners to make their woodland viable economically and to increase the value of their timber, because timber in this country is undervalued hugely. Our kind of backgrounds from many people working within the worker cooperative are all based in woodland management, green woodworking, forestry services. So we know the importance of managing our natural resources for that purpose. Strength and durability you get with using roundwood is phenomenal, really. And we use traditional mortise and tenon joinery and allow the aesthetics to speak themselves, really, afterwards with the roundwood. It's very fast, very affordable. We can go into woodlands, cherry pick the trees we want to use, fell them, pull them out, get them up to the workshop, strip the bark off them, mark them up and start framing straight away. So the carbon footprint is negative, really. We use hand tools. I think the only bit of machinery we really use for the framing process is possibly the odd cordless drill if we're drilling holes. So yeah, as a sustainable resource, we predominantly use larch, Douglas fir, which is under attack at the moment from various diseases, phytophthora, especially for the larch. It's touch wood, it's not spreading so much at the moment due to the weather. But a lot of the using redwood, the structural strength, especially larch, it's a high tannic acid timber, so it's just as good as oak and sweet chestnut, but it's a fraction of the cost. And it's not being utilised in our country at all. At the moment, with the phytophthora attacking larch, Forestry Commission are clear felling thousands of hectares, and it's all being chipped for biomass boilers. There's nothing wrong with the timber. The disease is actually in the bark and the brash, but they haven't got the resources to take that off in order to still use the timber. Whereas we can go on site, fell a tree, strip the bark there, and use it straight away, and there's no spread of the disease, and as I said, the timber is perfectly fine. Design is very important to us as well. As I said, we've sort of spent 10 years looking at different ways that we can use it. We build round houses, square houses, triangle, anything, we can really go to town on it and work with people with their ideas. As I say, we want to support self-build, so many people have got ideas of what their house is going to look like. So we can come in and work with them and design frameworks to fit with that shape, so you get what you want. We don't want to impose certain sort of shapes and models onto people. It's your choice. So one of the first projects we did was Longwood Community Woodland. This is the largest community-owned woodland in the UK. It's 300 acres, funded by the lottery, that was purchased, I think it's 3 years ago now. And we got planning permission to build a visitor centre. One of the stipulations of planning was that we had to use materials from the woodland. So as you can see, it's a very woody building. But it really gave us scope to work with a large framework to see what we were capable of doing. And it was very fun for us, but a scary and unusual process for the building regs officers that came round as we were constructing this. It was very much a kind of like, what are you doing there? Oh, we're doing this. Is that all right? Yeah? Okay. And that was, we literally set the precedent for this kind of building. So we're using traditional techniques. I mean, a lot of the framing that we're doing, it's based on Amish, Quaker, sort of new, early American timber framing. It's really simple. And as I said, the aesthetics come naturally with the round wood. So all elements of it: foundations, framing, raising, stud work, straw bale, lime plasters, cladding, the finish. It was a real journey and experimentation as into what these kind of materials can give to people. The foundations for this one, it was an unusual site. It was an old timber stacking site on the edge of the car park. And usually with foundations, we don't use any cement, concrete. It's a no-no for us, really. You don't need to use those materials a lot of the time with building. And we dug test bits for the foundations, but because it was a timber stacking, as we were going down 2 meters, we were finding logs, trunk ends and things like that had been dumped by the Forestry Commission previously, and they just gravelled over. So we had to come up with a new way of dealing with that. So we designed a floating log raft to actually mean that if at any point there's any subsidence, the log raft will actually take and support the whole building as it goes on. And as you can see, hand tools used on every operation, including these. Some of the diameter of these are up to 16-inch, up to 2-foot diameter logs that we chiselled out by hand. So it was quite good fun, that one. The framing methods, as I said, we can fell wood, get it straight into the workshop and be working on it that day, stripping down it quite quick, using these simple hand tools. Traditional methods of marking out, we use Japanese ink lines and spirit level. That's all you need: Japanese ink line, spirit level, and a good ruler. And Mortise and Tenon joinery, and oak pegged in offset positions. This is all, it's nothing new that we're using here. These are the methods that have been used for hundreds of years. We just haven't used them in the last 100. For this project in particular, we did have an architect working with us, and not all architects the same, but he just didn't have a clue. He didn't trust us at all on any part of the build. I've got an email that he sent actually that I framed, which is fantastic, saying that he has very grave reservations about Jamie joining pieces of timber together using mortise and tenon joints using oak pegs. I have grave reservations on the strength, durability, and practicality of using such methods in a building, which is kind of a bit amazing. The raising as well. We did cheat a bit. We managed to get the tractor in to start us off with on there, but the builds that we've used, it's all hand raising, people power, gym poles, block and tackle, ropes. So it's something that is a good community days as well. People getting involved with this. It's basically opening access to say that these buildings aren't, as a self builder, you can access these things. You are capable of doing these skills. It's not rocket science. Stud work, flooring, roof, all elements that can be brought in, and we can work and consult with people. As I said, we want to facilitate self-build, and our main focus is providing with a structurally sound framework from which a self-builder can then continue to build using materials that are very, very simple: straw bale, timber, nails, screws, lime renders. Straw bale that came in. This building, 500 bales were used in this building. £1,500 for all your wall and insulation. It's not a lot really. These are all pegged together with hazel rods and then butted up against a stud frame for external cladding. But it was a great day. I love that day. We had about 20 volunteers that day, bringing the straw in, and all through the project, community volunteers helping to build this, learn new skills, and to empower themselves and give confidence. It was great. The use of hemp and lime plasters. There's a company in Brecon called Tenon that develop eco paints, plasters, plasterboards, Woodland daub, thermofleece insulation using sheep's wool. And we were able to use, it was the first time they'd released these products, which is a hemp and lime plaster. It's a 2-coat plaster. And it was great, again, really easy to use, hands-on. We started off trying to use trowels and things like that. You just get your hands stuck in, really. It's a very easy medium. And then simple external cladding using larch and Douglas fir boarding. And that was the finish at the end of construction. It now has a 4-kilowatt solar panel array on it. It's got a borehole for its own water. There's a compost toilet been built next to it. And we're actually having our first meeting in it for the AGM of Longwood Community Woodland Group next week. I think it's next week, so it's the first time we're going to get in there. Our next project was a self-build project. As I say, it's the first one for the county for a residential building. And this was in Borth. It was 160 square metres, and we were contracted in to do the framework and also to put the roof on as well. And then the rest of the build was all done by the self-builders. I think it was 5 months in total they were to completion. At the end, going into this is now with the framework, with the straw bales, the flooring in, and the use of the materials they had there. Very easy. I think total cost for this building at 160 square metres was £95,000. That was including solar, electricity, water, everything connected. So just to finish, we offer a range of training and courses and consultation throughout projects. We're running some courses over the summer. We do workshops at festivals. We're at Glastonbury Festival in the craft field, where we do a roundwood timber framing course in 5 days and raise the frame at the end. We're hopefully going to be running courses at CAT next year as well, and through various conservation centres across Wales. But we have travelled around north of England, south of England. We've done building projects in Totnes, at Bowden House, building barns, and working with the people there to increase their skill knowledge. It's just a fun. It's very interesting. The talks that have come today, I kind of feel like I'm too simple with a lot of the things that I'm sort of trying to sort of put across here. But building, I think, can be simple. It can use the minimum of materials to create not only sort of a home, but that feeling you get when you walk into a building and you have a connection with it. And you feel like it has a connection with the outside world as well. It's very important. We don't. All of us can agree we don't want to live in boxes. These boxes that are springing up everywhere, with windows that start here and go up there, that don't let any light in and you can't see in. When you're designing your own house, this is the fun bit. You can get every element that you want into that house, but I think it's also important to think about the future as well. I get many people sort of contacting me, sort of wanting quotes for quite large buildings, 200 square metre buildings, and I'm thinking, if you want to live in this house when you're older, when you're 70, when you're 80, how are you going to maintain such a large building? How are you going to heat that? Many people think about what they need now. They might have children. Those children are going to move out, and you're going to be left with a large house. It's like, small houses is what's really exciting me at the moment, and we're developing sort of 1- and 2-bedroom small timber frame houses. I think the 1-bedroom that I'm currently looking at £80,000, 60 to £80,000, depending on what you want. It's very small, and many people say as well, how do these buildings how can they be incorporated into urban landscapes? And I was down at Transition Conference a few months ago, where they're starting on a project to build 27 houses outside of Totnes. And the fundamentals of looking at design at that point, they were, one example was that they were looking at what the roof was going to be constructed out of. And in the end, they went with Spanish slate, which was going to be transported from Spain. A huge cost. And I asked the question, why weren't you using green roof? Because you get the added insulation with it and the beauty and the way it blends into the landscape. Oh, well, the design didn't incorporate, it was too high a pitch for that kind of green roof to be sustained on there. So why wasn't the house designed in the first place with a low-level pitch roof? I didn't get an answer. It's kind of, if you're at the stage where you're designing a house, you've got to think about how it's going to be used in the future, not necessarily what you need it to do now, but also, just have that kind of that knowledge of the materials you're going to use and how big an impact are they going to cause on the planet. I mean, we're quite fortunate in Wales that we have the One Planet Directive, which is, as was spoken about before, about using one planet resources, and I'm finding the different planning laws, especially because we're based in Wales. I think because there's more of an agricultural background in Wales, that they're actually a bit more forward-thinking than England. England still seems to be very difficult to get planning permission, especially in open countryside. So, but we want to be there to sort of support people, and as I said, by building a framework that passes building regulations and is structurally sound, and then it enables you to then carry on building in a very simple way using these materials, I hope is going to be a solution and an answer to the housing needs. So thank you very much.